This is the session on the cultural economy and regional nonprofits, and it's so wonderful to see so many friends from the Windham County area. I've been connected to Windham County arts folks for years with people like John Estes and Sarah Coffey and quite a crew down. Deeply appreciate your participation in this session tonight. We're going to keep our microphones muted until it's our turn to speak, if that's okay. I'm a neutral facilitator of this session. I don't have any particular agenda to carry into it, and I'm really eager to see what you're all thinking and also see best practices that we could be learning to share with other places in Vermont. We also have Karen Middleman here, the head of the Vermont Arts Council, who's going to share some of her thoughts and best practices. We hope everyone will join for the closing session on this forum to share what came out of this conversation with everybody who's been involved in the larger conversation. There will be a survey to follow this session. So if you are, if you haven't had a chance to say everything you want to say, we still want to hear it, and we'll add it in. We're going to be reporting some findings to the governor based on some of these conversations, and so we're really delighted to have you all with us. I want to turn it over to Karen. We've asked Karen to take 5 to 7 minutes to just sort of keynote this conversation on the cultural economy and regional nonprofits, and tee up some of what she's seeing as best practices and potentially opportunities that are available from a statewide perspective. So Karen, great to have you with us.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
It's great to be here, especially in Windham County. Southern Vermont was my first connection to Vermont, and so it still has a warm place in my heart. So great to be here with you all. Let me give you a little snapshot of what we're seeing from the Vermont Arts Council when we look out at the impact of the coronavirus on our state's arts landscape and cultural landscape. So we all know that there are hundreds of museums and theaters and galleries and community arts organizations that are either completely closed or operating at really limited capacity. And those cultural organizations were among the first to close to protect public health, and many of them are going to be among the last to reopen. And these are organizations that are economic anchors for our communities. So that means that their closure has ripple effects throughout downtowns and villages and really throughout our entire state. So in May and June, Vermont Humanities and the Arts Council ran a cultural relief grant program, and it gave us a chance, gave us a kind of window into what cultural organizations were experiencing. And remember, May seems like a year ago, right? So May and June was really the beginning couple of months of the pandemic. And what we looked at when we saw cultural organizations that applied to us for relief, and we asked them to demonstrate and describe their losses. At that point, just a couple months into the pandemic, arts and humanities organizations that applied to us, there were about 200 of them, were already experiencing losses of close to $15 million across the state of Vermont. And when we asked them to project their losses, looking a couple months into the future, most of them looked towards the end of the summer. And they projected an additional $21 million in losses for their organizations. When you add that to the losses that we're getting reported from individual artists across the state, we're close to $37 million in losses for the Vermont's arts and culture sector. And that's just casting our gaze to the end of the summer. And we know that a lot of our organizations rely for a lot of their revenue on that May to October window to make up a lot of the revenue that will tide them through the sleepy winter. So what that means is that there are more losses to come, especially for organizations that rely on live in-person events and bringing large audiences together. When you look nationwide, the Bureau of Economic Research says only 45% of arts and entertainment businesses expect to survive if the crisis lasts 4 months. This drops to 35% if the crisis lasts 6 months. So before the pandemic hit, whenever I talked to a group, my message was always about how the arts and the creative sector are vital to the economies of every Vermont village and town. Now, in a time of COVID, I think our message is the arts are going to be vital to Vermont's economic recovery. There's no way that our communities bounce back without the arts and culture being a really central force. We have research that demonstrates that the creative sector is a catalyst for economic growth across the United States, but especially, and this is interesting for Vermont, especially in small rural states like ours. And we know how true that is in Vermont. Let me just throw out some numbers, some statistics on the impact of the creative economy, which many of you may already know. Nonprofit arts and culture organizations in Vermont make up a $123 million industry and generate 3.2% of our state's GDP. If you look at the broader creative sector, and that includes arts and culture and related occupations, provides 9% of the jobs in our state, a little over 40,000 jobs. And we also know that cultural attractions, that concerts, sculpture gardens, a host of arts events, generate event-related spending that totals $44 million a year. So what does all this mean? It means that arts and culture are going to be absolutely vital to Vermont's economic recovery. And we really need to think about arts and culture as part of our community's infrastructure and as part of the infrastructure that we need to invest in now so that it's there later when we're all ready to reopen. As we try to envision what Vermont looks like 4 months from now, 6 months from now, art, music, poetry are going to be vital to helping us all. I think on a couple levels. I know that music, poetry, and the arts are already helping us all as individuals just to cope and to survive and to feel a sense of resilience and hope. But I'm thinking more collectively that we're going to need arts and arts organizations to bring us back together and to reinvent our public spaces. I'm especially interested in hearing from you all and exploring how art and how the pandemic, is going to change our relationship to public spaces and to our cultural organizations. We rely on public spaces like museums and galleries and libraries to bring us together, and right now we can't do that. So how do we need to reinvent those spaces and re-envision what community means through the arts? There's so many examples all across the state of artists and arts organizations that are creatively adapting their practices to the pandemic. Yellow Barn's Music Hall is a great example. They've mounted speakers on a U-Haul truck, and they're finding incredibly inventive ways to deliver music to people who need it most, to offer solace to people who are locked down in nursing homes and assisted living facilities, by parking the U-Haul in the parking lot of an assisted living facility and broadcasting music, everything from Chopin to the Beatles to Beethoven, and it's for residents of these facilities. The musical handy stations in downtown Brattleboro are another terrific example. Those are hand washing stations there's a prototype in place now and many more to come. They're designed by artists in collaboration with musicians. So the artists design the sculptural body for the hand washing station, and the musician supplies the tune that you're going to listen to tell you how long to wash your hands. It's a great example of a collaboration in downtown Brattleboro. The Vermont Arts Exchange in North Bennington is doing all kinds of inventive outdoor concerts and live performances by mounting speakers and actually constructing a stage on top of their arts bus and taking the arts bus all over downtown Bennington. There are countless examples like this where artists and organizations are navigating through the economic disruptions that are caused by the pandemic and reimagining their missions and their business models, offering online concerts, workshops, lectures, and performances. And I heard an interesting reflection from a gentleman in Franklin County at a museum last week, saying that he's realizing that his museum is reaching people online who wouldn't have been connected to the museum before because they couldn't physically come and visit the museum. They had childcare issues or they had transportation hurdles. And so the online forum, which a lot of us are really tired of and really don't feel is a good substitute for face-to-face interaction, right? But in that case, the online form of engagement was bringing people into the museum's family and into their community and into their creative experiences who otherwise wouldn't have been connected to them. So I have to say, if I'm honest, that I haven't seen many cultural organizations that are reinventing their business models in a way that actually makes them money. So all of these examples that I've just cited they're inspiring, they're terrific, but so far at least, they're not sustaining those organizations for the long haul. However, they are a huge source of inspiration, and I know we'll continue to need to draw on that wellspring of incredible creativity as we all think about the future together. So I look forward to our conversation and to hearing from you all what you envision for Windham County.
Thanks so much, Karen. And there's a couple of people asking, is this forum beyond the arts? And you know, we envision in Vermont the creative economy as being everything from studio arts to production in technology, to the humanities, and it's great to see Christopher Kaufman-Ilstrup with us. But we're also interested in the future of nonprofits and the pressures on nonprofits as well in this conversation. So it's concentrated, but we'll try to get everyone's voice on the table and hear your perspective on ways to move forward. We've basically got 3 questions that we're gonna ask, and I'll go through them really quickly so we get a sense of how the discussion's gonna go. The first part I'm really gonna concentrate on, you know, what do you want for the future of arts and culture and nonprofits in the region? And what's holding you back? What are some of the barriers? What are some of the current situations that are struggle? Then we really want to think about what are some of the promising practices, the seed ideas in your community? What are people doing that are creative that we can feed back to other communities around the state as we go on this tour to the next place? And we can also build into the recovery website that shares best practices between town and town and town all across the state, and that may have policy implications for what we should be reporting back to the governor and to the legislature in the future. So we've got all our ears open and are going to be thinking hard to digest and add up your voices tonight, and deeply appreciate you being participant. So let's go to this first question. You know, what do we want for the future of arts, culture, the cultural economy, and nonprofits in the Windham County region? What's holding us back? What are the big barriers you're facing today? And I'd ask people to go to under participants. You can raise your hand there by clicking, is it there? I'm not seeing it. By clicking your name, there's a place to, if you put your cursor on your name, you can raise your hand, I think. I'm not seeing it work though. Or you can raise your hand like this and I'll pay attention and call on you. Who'd like to start? I see Ricky Rosati's got, I'm not sure if Ricky's a guy or a gal. Where are you, Ricky?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you have the floor.
Thank you. My name is Ricky Rosati and I'm based in Brattleboro, but I have been campaigning to decolonize Brattleboro to reclaim the native name of the municipality back to Wantescott. And so that's part of the future I'm envisioning, which would include decentralizing our economy by having a municipal-based currency. And the Vermont State Legislator has started working on a blockchain currency for the last 2 years, but I have more faith in municipalities regulating their own currency that would be by direct democratic public vote. Some of the main challenges would be depending on how their government is chartered and if they have either a self-rule declaration or a Colonel Dillon's regulation, which means that they are under the direct jurisdiction of the federal government. And although the federal government has mostly outlawed municipalities or organizations forming their own currency, there is a trend of cities doing it, to the extent that recently there was an article published from Toledo, Washington, D.C., where they restarted a printing press, a wooden printing press that had been out of commission for 90 years, but they just restarted it. And so this 90-year-old technology that they're using is one of the most progressive stories I have heard.
That's really, Ricky, that's really cool, and really appreciate it. And there may be more on this to come. I want to make sure that other people get to go in and put their ideas on the table. So we're marking this down. We've got a scribe that's paying attention. We're also recording it. So thank you so much for sharing that. I want to go to Sarah Coffey, who's had her hand up.
Hi everyone. Hi, Paul. So for folks who don't know me, I'm Sarah Coffey. I live in Guilford. I used to run an arts organization called Vermont Performance Lab. 14 years, I think we existed, and I now serve in the Vermont Legislature. And I have a wish and a hope and a question for folks. What I'm hoping is that our cultural organizations survive, and I think many of particularly the performing arts organizations were the first to close and will probably be the last to reopen. And so I'm interested to hear from folks on the call how they're doing, but also we got some funding specifically for arts and cultural organizations. And I guess the feedback that I want to give you, Paul, but what I'm hearing from the field is that the legislature passed $5 million to be specifically for arts and culture. And then ACCD is rolling those grants out, and the Arts Council is involved. But the agency of the ACCD put some kind of artificial caps on some of the grants. And so I'm afraid that the money that the legislature intended to get out to our arts and cultural sectors is not going out. I've heard that 1.5 of the 5 million has gone out. And this greatly concerns me because organizations need this today. And we know that organizations hire artists and all sorts of workers. And if the organizations don't make it, which was the intention that we had, I think there's going to be our revitaliz for all the comments that Karen made at the top of this. I think we need our artists, we need our organizations as we recover. So I just want to give that feedback that I've been hearing that from organizations in Windham County.
Let's consider that marked, and we will have a discussion about that with them. And also, I know that there's been a number of designated funds that they're a bit overwhelmed. So it may be a delay just in having manpower, but I'll check in on that, and hope you do too. Other thoughts on some of the barriers to the, obviously there's an enormous hit, and it's going to be really difficult for arts companies to be in the black right now, and a lot of people are knocked off their work. But are there other barriers besides that, and other challenges that should be on the table, or other perspectives on what we should be working towards as we look to recovery? I see Zon's got his hand up.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Zon Eastis. I, like Sarah, also live in Guilford. And the thing that, Paul, that I am aware of, and I'm sure we all are, is what this COVID pandemic, as well as the death of George Floyd, they've opened up a remarkable truths about so many aspects of our culture, about so many aspects of the way we work, and so many aspects of about American society. And I really hope, I really have a lot of faith in artists and the creatives in our state to be able to address the incredible inequities that we see everywhere, and to be able to bring a voice to a better situation, a better vision, a more equitable, more honorable vision for who we are. I know that I'm really excited right now. I'm involved in a project down in Brattleboro that is about really bringing forth musical performances of non-canonized composers. I'm a musician, cellist, and so I'm very excited by this. We found some amazing music that I don't think many people know about. Really excited to get that out into the world. And I think that kind of, well, it excites me. I hope it does excite a lot of other people. But I think that arts and culture organizations have a real opportunity here to speak about a better world that we're already in touch with at a certain level, but need to just amplify. And thank you to sorry, Paul, one more thing. Just thank you to the work that the Vermont Arts Council is doing all the time to forward the unheard voices in Vermont. So I really appreciate that. Same with the Vermont Council and Vermont Humanities Council. So it's all good work. Here's an opportunity for us.
Terrific, Zahn, and so well said. The idea that the arts have the power to build a better vision of who we are as a people in Vermont. That's really tremendous. And that's work artists do all the time.
Yes, absolutely.
Humanities folks do all the time. And is going to be essential to our recovery. Other folks have a perspective either on where we are or on barriers that we're facing, the challenges we face. Yes, Robert McBride. Nice to see you, Robert.
Yeah, hi, I'm Robert McBride, and I started running an arts organization in Bellows Falls called the Rockingham Arts and Museum Project, which is basically an arts advocacy organization. But I'm also very involved with the Arts Council initiative on the Vermont Creative Network, which in our zone, the southern zone, includes both Windham and Bennington counties. And I feel one of the biggest services that we can try to do through this Vermont Creative Network is to connect artists with each other. I mean, it's like we're living on an earthquake right now. We're living in the present. We're living on an earthquake. It's really hard to think about the future and to move towards it if, we don't have any idea how long this pandemic is going to limit us. But of course, we can't stop living. So, it's kind of very positive to be in the present. But I'm really, one of my greatest challenges is to make sure I continue to get information to the creatives in our region and information that we can relay and hopefully they can interact with. And I think it's just a challenge to try to develop a plan moving forward. And to hear from Sarah about the money that's there is an opportunity, but how can that money effectively be getting out, and is it being limited? And, how do we just march forward? We're all in this kind of quandary, of what's going on, and we don't know what's going to be going on.
Thanks.
So it's just kind of more of a comment that everyone understands that we're really in a unique place in history.
2 nights ago, we were in Orange County, and someone put it in a similar way, Robert. They said, we're feeling the need to plan for recovery, and we feel this need, and we feel it with tremendous urgency, but we're facing absolute uncertainty in terms of what's going to happen politically, what's going to happen in terms of democracy, what's going to happen in terms of the speed of recovery at the end of the pandemic, the development of a vaccine. All those things are uncertain. And it leads us in this place of anxiety and deep tension, psychologically as individuals and culturally. We can't give into that though. And of course, the arts are one of the fundamental answers to the human spirit in times of crisis, which a number of you are saying it feels that.
Right. And it also though gives us what can we do most to support that is to be in touch with the other artists and arts organizations within our community, and whether that community is our village or our town or the ones we share collaborations with. I mean, that's really where the benefit is in that collaboration and supporting each other and realizing it's not you that have been singled out. So you just get on the phone and talk to people and do that, and then see how that can build the energy and support.
Thanks so much, Robert. Robin Stern.
Hi, Paul. Thank you. So I am on the board of Next Stage Arts Project, and I'm very happy I'm right next to Barry Stockwell in my gallery view, who works at Next Stage. And of course, as a performing arts venue in Putney, our building is about doors being open and audiences coming in, and we've been great about sustaining the organization through ticket sales as well as through grant operations. So the challenge is to remain vibrant and vital to the community, just presented front and center. And what we're finding is how critical it is to partner. And I think Robert touched on this a little bit, but where are our partnerships? Where are our collaborations? Because where before we may have been able to afford to be a little more singular or a little more focused on what performances we wanted to put forth, now it's really about community. And I think, and Barry may touch on this, but we have the Windham Arts Unite coming up, where we're collaborating with a number of different organizations and just trying to reach out to as many of our different constituencies as possible, and also looking to a little bit maybe unconventional areas, but we need to do more with our schools. We're holding a blood drive there in another month. I don't know if that would have happened, a while ago, but it is just our goal is to remain vital in the community. And while we're doing outdoor concerts, we believe we will reopen, as all of us will. We just don't know when. And it's figuring that out. But partnership became very important in looking at our steps.
Thank you so much, Robin. And it looks like Barry's ready to follow up on that.
Yeah. We are inching forward with programming. We started in March with video series, the quarantine sessions and Cooped Up Kids series, but we are trying to move ahead with some stream shows. Robin mentioned this 7 arts organizations. It's kind of like a variety show, bouncing from these different venues on Sunday, August 2nd, with music from Next Stage and some theater from NEYT and BMC's involved and the Jazz Center and so on. And we've started with a drive-in theater setup for an outdoor concert, because that was one of the first things that the state okayed. And now we can do 150 maximum lawn concerts. I just wanted to mention one barrier that that we really tried to be sensitive about, that just sort of came up last night in Putney, is audience comfort level. And we had a problem yesterday morning with some graffiti. There was a pop-up sort of rally against that last night, and Facebook sort of lit up with, what are you people doing gathering outside at this point in the pandemic? And so that's one barrier that we really try to plan for and be sensitive about, but we are worried that there may be some, as we try to move forward and with baby steps and programming, that there are going to be some people that look at us and say, you shouldn't be doing this.
Thanks for sharing that. Other people have perspectives on barriers or challenges that still face you before we go on to the next question on some best practices and cool things going. Ann, did you want to speak? Ann Dempsey? You're muted if you did.
Okay, sorry. I work at the Rockingham Library, and before COVID came along, we had just gotten a wonderful Vermont Arts Council grant for a hanging system for art displays, so we could have artists displaying in the library. And they're installed, but there's nothing on them. And So I was just thinking, well, maybe we could have a virtual art show with some artists, sponsored by the library on our webpage. So if libraries can help in any way support the arts, you know, they could be for sale. We wouldn't be taking the money. You'd have to deal with that. That's a possibility. And also we've been using Fact TV a little bit more because, you know, they film things for free and it gets the word out to quite a few people. So those are my two ideas. That's it.
Well, maybe someone will get in contact with you afterwards to see if there's a way to do a virtual show.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, Sandy.
Yes, I am Sandy Rouse with the Brattleboro Literary Festival. I'm the director, and we're kind of in a weird group because we're all free, so we don't charge admission, and we don't own a facility. We rent facilities every year, and we are, you know, next year will be our 20th year. So we've been doing this for a long time, but this hasn't been easy for us because we clearly can't do what we've been doing, and we can't get any financial aid because we don't have any staff. The only people that we use are contractors that we hire every year to do specific things for us. And we have some events during the year, but they're all done by volunteers. So, you know, it's kind of a different world for us, but we're, you know, moving headfirst into the virtual world and thinking that it's kind of been a great learning opportunity that we'll be able to use a dual approach in the future to have events that are both broadcast and events that are live at the same time. Because I think hybrid events is going to be the only way to go for a few years. People are just not comfortable being in a crowded room.
Even for a few years.
Yeah.
You're thinking that way? Yeah. Thanks for that, Sandy. Let's turn a corner with this other question. If you come up with another idea of a barrier or a point of vision, the way Zahn expressed himself about a way that we might want to head together. This next question is, what are your ideas, are there promising practices, strategies, or programs emerging today in your town or region to expand arts events, arts activities? Karen mentioned some, a number of you have touched on some, but what else is going on that's creative in ways that individual artists have adapted and are providing leadership, or your organizations are, that other places could learn from?
And Paul, Lynn Hawes had an idea, and I'm not sure if it was related to the last question or this question, but she had her hand up.
It wasn't so much an idea, but I wanted to follow up on what Sandy said. Wondering about the supports for arts groups that are.
Oops.
Thought I unmuted, sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
I wanted to follow up on Sandy's comment. Wondering if others are faced with the issues about applying for resources, the grants, when your organization is supported by totally volunteers. I don't know how many of our arts organizations depend upon volunteers, but mine does. And that makes us ineligible for some of the resources that were available. So I just want to throw that out as a barrier.
Thank you. Well, I'm seeing Karen Middleman nodding, and maybe we can ask her at the end to comment in her closing thoughts about that. I see that Star Latronica is waiting to speak.
Hi, sorry, I was just going back to barriers that we're facing, and we've worked really hard to connect with the community and to bring the community in for conversation. And just this meeting itself points out the barrier that a lot of our community members really don't have access to technology. And so this is something that we're really struggling with. We'd love to be offering programs and offering those conversations, and people in Brattleboro are very creative, and I went to a lovely event last Friday that Tara was one of the organizers of, that was a healing on the Commons. So we have been able to do some large outdoor gatherings with social distancing, but when the weather turns, we're not going to be able to do that. So that's one of the things I'm looking at is, what are we going to be able to do to really engage all members of the community, and if they don't have either access to internet or if they don't have a device. We have commission members that have had to borrow devices from the library because they don't have a device that's current enough to take advantage of a Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
So that's really something that we're looking at.
That's
so grants for that would be important.
Yeah, that's a big one. And Star, can you tell me what organization you're with?
Oh, sure. I'm the director of the Brooks Memorial Library in Brattleboro.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Other folks have their hand up? Yes, Tara.
Thank you, Star, for making mention of our event that was co-hosted with by the Root Social Justice Center and by Susu Healing Collective last week. I don't know if a lot of people on this call are aware of the Root Social Justice work, but we provide a space for people who are marginalized and feel socially distanced, even before the pandemic. So that space is critical for social connections for the most marginalized members of our community. So it's not for us, it's people's lives. Their lives are like not having that space to come together and have our programmings is affecting us, and it's compounded with the fact that a lot of people don't have that technology to participate in a Zoom manner. We're finding that the longer that we're in, participation is dwindling a little bit. We're doing all the best that we can to make up for that by delivering meals on nights that we have programs, so that people feel like they're still participating in a program and at least connected through a shared meal during that time on a computer. But there's so much is lost somatically in really feeling connected to community by by Zoom, as all of you know, but it's just compounded when we're talking about marginalized community. I really like what Zahn mentioned, that it's really a opportunity now with the virus, with the political and social uprising, to really amplify different voices that you may not have represented in your organizations. We would ask that you reach out to us for that, and to make sure that the voices that you may, if you don't have involvement with people from our communities, they may not be. We just want to make sure that the message, the voices, there's accountability in putting those messages out there. So I just say that with gratitude for this opportunity to gather with you today. Thanks.
Well, we're grateful to you, Tara. Thank you very much. Other folks have perspectives. Let's think a little bit about what are creatives doing that are creatively responding to this challenge, because we're living in it. We don't get to go to another universe. What are we doing, and what could people in Windham County artists teach other people in different parts of the state? What are some of the cool things that have happened that could help other places move forward?
Hi, this is someone who's phoning in. Can I talk? I don't have any way to raise my hand.
Well, thank you for chiming in. Can you let me know who you are?
Sure. This is Erica Walsh. I'm the director of the Moore Free Library and Kroll Art Gallery in Newfane.
Awesome. Great to have you with us. Go ahead.
Thanks. And so I've been listening and here on the phone because I'm one of the people who does not have any kind of internet that's capable of connecting to a Zoom meeting at my home. We've been open, the library and the art gallery have been open since early June, and we're having people come in, and tons of our patrons do not have any kind of electronic access. So they're really happy to be back in person, and we're having outdoor programming, which we'll continue to do until it gets too cold. But I really liked what someone said. I think it was somebody from Next Stage talking about the idea of having traveling performers and or traveling arts. We have a different artist exhibiting in our art gallery monthly and continue to do that now that we're reopened. But you know, maybe there could be traveling art shows or some kind of clamshell or something that the Vermont Humanities Council could bring their speakers up and down Route 30 or throughout the county and pay for some little heaters like they have at restaurants where people can, you know, sit around outside comfortably, maybe not in January, but the rest of the months when it's not freezing, and appreciate the arts and just have it go from town to town. A lot of people in Newfane, it's an ordeal and a big thing to go to Brattleboro and go maybe once a month. So, and as is the case to go to Putney. So, you know, just because something's being offered there doesn't mean that all of the community members who comprise the greater Brattleboro or the greater Manchester area are going to it. So, you know, some kind of outdoor road show might be something that people would attend, and the venues, you know, I can certainly speak for our library, would be happy to chip in money towards it so that it wasn't necessarily reliant only on ticket sales.
That's terrific. Hey, thanks for sharing. Other folks have stories of things that they've seen other organizations doing or creative work that's happening. I love the idea of that bus that pulls up and people go up on the roof and play in different parts of the town. That sounds so uplifting and fun. Are there other interesting practices going on with the arts? Sandy?
I think the most interesting thing I've seen this summer has been the Vermont Jazz Center did a series of live concerts in the parking lot of the old Basketville store. Like a drive-in concerts, which were really cool. And I think Next Stage Arts was the sponsor of that, maybe. I'm not really sure. Barry?
Did people stay in their cars, Sandy?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I guess some of them got out, put their chairs, you know, outside the cars, but they were parked in a distant fashion, and they had these performers, and it was great. Yeah.
So Sandy, that was Next Stage, and Barry worked on that, but it was Vermont Jazz Sextet, and yeah, it was fantastic, and it was our first outdoor event. But the park, everything was planned. You know, the cars were checkerboard parked, yep. And people were so happy to be out, but all respect. You know, it was a small group, but just happy to be outside. And again, a partnership, and people kept their distances. They came within their own pods, and they all respected what they needed to do. I mean, part of that is because that's who we are, you know, in Southern Vermont. But yeah, doing more of those as we can is really good for the soul.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of doing things outdoors, and I wish that our festival took place during a time of the year when the weather was more pleasant, but oh well. But I think that people have been really creative and done a really wonderful job with the summer. Yeah.
So let's count that as an idea. I'm wondering if there are artists, if there are visual artists or musical artists or writers or others who are doing art that responds to the pandemic, art that is designed to answer some of the challenges that we face in terms of justice or the concatenation that we live in right now. Anyone have thoughts on creative work? Zahn? We can't hear you, Zahn.
Thank you, sorry. I'm waiting for the really brilliant ideas to come forward. I think it's really a trick for so many to figure all this out. And it just, there are lots of great ideas out there, but the really amazing ones. I'm sort of enamored, I haven't done it yet, but I'm enamored by what Yellow Barn has done with their Beethoven walks of taking people through the woods, listening to music and seeing bits of scores of Beethoven's work something that Beethoven himself did. So trying to enable people to sort of relive an experience of another person. Now, granted, he's a white composer, he's dead, he's of the canon, all that stuff, but still, it's pretty interesting stuff, I think,
Sure.
as far as enlivening a personal experience for people. So looking for ways to do that kind of thing.
And
I
did
love
they-
the drive-in concerts too. I'm getting right. We're going to do, the Brattleboro Music Center is doing some of those at the end of the season in August, and I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, so, one of the things that we hear is, restaurants are opening and stuff, but let's be real about it. A restaurant that opens with 25% of the seating open and maybe even some seating outdoors is probably still losing money.
Oh, yeah.
And so arts folks, even when they're trying so hard, are probably mostly losing money.
Yes.
Is anyone doing, seeing anything that seems to click and that brings in a few bucks? Are there any ideas there? Not much money on the table these days, huh?
I think, excuse me, I'll go a step further. I'm aware of efforts of what Ram was talking about earlier about collaborations and working together with other folks, not necessarily on a local level, but I'm aware of some artists that are using the online forum in order to get national and international audiences with small performances, and they're actually creating economies for themselves. It's not broad, it's not everyone's doing this, and I'm sure it would pretty quickly reach a saturation point, but there are people that are somehow beginning to learn about how to use a broader audience in order to...
How are they monetizing that, Zon?
Well, as I understand it, it's just that you get access to the thing. I haven't done it, I haven't been engaged. I saw one of the first ones they did for free, but I understand they're just denying, like a VPR, they're just denying service until you give money. Yeah.
Okay. Other ideas on ways that arts, creatives, writers are either responding to the crisis or doing new things. Ricky, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, and so even though I've been campaigning as a politician for the last 2 years, I've always identified as a multimedia artist, and creating a currency is one of the most creative things I have ever been a part of. And some of the strategies I've been doing that are, I think, more effectively than proposing it to either our select board or motioning it as a representative at our next annual meeting, is to have 5% of our current registered voters, which would be 483 signatures for people to petition to have a public referendum so that we can vote directly on a currency.
Okay. Well, good luck with that. Other folks have ideas, creative ideas for answering the current economic, social challenge. Yes, Sandy. Sandy, we just see the top of your head there.
Sorry.
Okay.
I ran out of battery juice, so I'm kind of lounging on the sofa.
Uh-huh.
I was just going to mention something that downtown Brattleboro has done, which is they have hand washing stations, which have been, they've had artists commissioned to create the design for them. And so they're really cool looking, and then they're downtown, and then there's some other element to them. People who are downtown all the time help me out. I've seen a few of them.
Those were prototyped by Erin O'Keefe, and in collaboration with a design team. And it was actually, she proposed it to the town, and it was bringing it to other towns throughout Vermont too. So collaborating with a local business, and it's a pretty inventive prototype. It's really forward thinking.
We've seen them
It's
really
a great
cool.
example of how artists, I think artists are responding in some pretty creative ways like that. And I know that a lot of artists are like teaching classes outside at a time when people are feeling stressed out. Somatic or dance or movement practices are kind of more needed, and people are shifting, at least in this nice weather, to being able to be outside. I know the Brattleboro School of Dance has been doing some really good work in that way.
Yeah, thank goodness for the outdoors. Gerald Stockman and then Edith Moss. Go ahead, Gerald.
Thank you, Paul. I'm happy to, I'm Jerry Stockman. I work at and am one of the founders of the New England Youth Theater in Brattleboro. And I'm happy to share some of our ideas that have proved successful this summer. We have 8 programs, all of which are ongoing, involving the young people that we serve. The most popular turned out to be radio plays. And these are completely online on a particular platform that supports that kind of activity. And the directors and the kids who are participating are recording radio plays. There's a separate cadre of kids that are working on the technical elements, especially sound effects and music. And they'll be put together and made available through a local radio station and hopefully as podcasts. And that's kept folks busy and involved. We have 2 programs that are hybrids, part online via Zoom and part in the theater with limited numbers and limited hours, all conforming to COVID safety guidelines. And we have a couple of other programs for younger kids that are all online. But I have to emphasize what Paul and what Sarah have said, that all of these interesting programs and collaborations certainly serve to maintain us as vehicles for expression, and we struggle to maintain visibility and to continue to do meaningful work. But without income, it's not going to amount to very much. And every organization at some point, unless they're particularly well endowed, is going to have to downsize in my estimation.
Yeah, yeah. It's a tough economic reality for all of us. Edith, thank you so much.
Okay, am I unmuted?
I can hear you.
Okay. I hadn't planned to speak, but I'm a member of the Brattleboro Women's Chorus, and COVID cut short our ability to practice together in person, but we continued virtually, and we're going to be doing it again in the fall. And this is a collaboration with Becky Graber that we pay for. In other words, this is not a free kind of thing that there's lots of online, and there are other things that I'm part of because singing's important for me. And it's a challenge virtually because none of us are in sync. And so you've got to really do it creatively. But there are a bunch of people that stayed together in the spring, and I think are planning to be together, and we'll be contributing. I mean, that will be not something that's simply a freebie. And as I said, there are other groups outside like Habana and a lot of different groups that basically you pay for 6 sessions, 8 sessions or whatever, and then you participate. So it's a challenge, but I think people are up to it.
That's awesome, Edith. Thank you so much. So we're going to turn a corner in just a second. Carla is waiting and Ruben is waiting, and I'm going to call on you. But we also want to start moving to this question on what are your ideas for additional action that's needed locally, regionally, at the state level to address these challenges and to work towards equitable economic recovery and renewal. We are also going to have a little time at the end to hear from people like Christopher and Karen about their perspective of what they've heard and what maybe it adds up to, but we're going to have to go quickly. So I'm going to ask everyone to be very to the point so that we can hear from as many people as we can. Carla, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll try my video here too. I'm Carla. I'm here on behalf of World Learning, or SIT. We're known primarily for our study abroad programs, but we do a lot of capacity building and training programs as well. We're quite large, and most people assume that because we're large, we have resources, but the inability to travel has pretty much decimated the organization. We were hit very hard. And mostly, I just want to say that a lot of our alumni end up in the nonprofits that people are representing here. They end up in nonprofits that work with marginalized people, that feed people, that house people, that treat people medically or mentally. And I'm very worried about those kinds of nonprofits, as many of their donations have dropped. They can't do the traditional fundraisers that they've depended on for many years. And I do appreciate all the art, but I also just wanted to bring up the topic again that there are lots of other nonprofits here that are suffering greatly and trying desperately to come up with creative ways to continue the very much needed work in this community.
Thank you so much, Carla. Ruben. You're still muted. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, here I go. Okay. Hello, Paul. I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Ruben. I work at the United Way of Windham County as the Director of Development and Community Impact. I'm also on the steering committee, the CCRRC, in which these discussions came out of. And so I think I'm going to reiterate what I was just talking about in the business breakout, which for some reason I thought that, well, I was preaching the word over there that, nonprofits are businesses. Nonprofits need to be making profits in order to, or nonprofits need to be making profits in order to sustain themselves. Just like for-profits apply for PPP loans, so did nonprofits. At the United Way, we had a COVID-19 response fund so that we were able to address a lot of the lost revenue that nonprofits had. And so I was here, and I'm here just to kind of reiterate that statement that nonprofits should be looking at themselves as businesses, adapting with the type of agility that a lot of our for-profit businesses exhibited. And that, one other thing, just to plug in United Way, we are here for every nonprofit businesses as a resource through our 211 product or through our COVID-19 response fund. To date, we've issued out tens of thousands of dollars in relief for nonprofit businesses. And so if you have questions about that, then you can certainly send me an email. We've supported all sorts of nonprofits, from the arts to the basic needs. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, drop your email into the chat, Ruben, in case anyone wants to reach you. Thank you. We only have a few more minutes. I want to be sure. Are there things that need to happen at the local level, regionally, or from the state that will help address these challenges and work towards equitable recovery in Vermont? I'm looking for hands.
I'll say something about that really quickly, if you don't mind.
Really quickly, yeah.
Paul, we were just talking about this actually in the other breakout session, the business section, and there was some really great discussions about how some of these businesses are shifting their shifts. So there's never too many people in one area, and how do we change our 9-to-5 idea of what work is? And the other thing that came up was obviously broadband. We need to be advocating for this because nonprofits and every sector of business needs to have this as one of their priorities when they're advocating for themselves.
Thanks so much. Robin Stern.
Hi, Paul. Thank you. Ruben mentioned the broadband. Broadband is critical, and Vermont has really been behind in that segment, and now more than ever. And if we're going to be seeing ourselves going in and out of physical performances and virtual performances, and for our children, we need broadband available. But also, I'd like to see the state be able to support and advertise on behalf of arts organizations and cultural organizations. I'm sure there are publications, there are communication vehicles, and if we're doing, whether it's finally physical performances or if they're the virtual performances, people tap into Vermont, and it would be good if the state also promotes some of these activities.
Thank you so much. Are there other folks who haven't spoken? Lynn Haas. Can't hear you, Lynn.
I was just dealing with a mouse in my room, so I'm glad I wasn't screaming with my mute on. Anyway, a few weeks ago, I went to an interesting workshop I think you all ran on creating more outdoor spaces. Yeah. I think mostly thinking about restaurants, but I'm thinking this is another partnership that the artists could in fact really be involved in helping communities figure out some more community spaces where performances could take place.
Wonderful. And artists are leading in so many places on that. Any other thoughts on, we heard earlier, and I suspect we'll hear again from Karen and Christopher, the importance of the state dollars to support arts in this crisis. But are there any other suggestions of things that folks need to be doing or that you need from region or the state of Vermont? No, I'm not seeing hands. Anything else that, we're going to go in just about 5 minutes to hearing some reflections from visiting team members, but who can share ideas and potentially resources that may be available. But do people have a point of inspiration or a point, either something you would like to say to the governor or something that you would like to say to each other in terms of faith in the future or mutual support? Don't want to lead you too far. Well, let's turn, go ahead, Zahn.
Sorry.
You're muted though.
Good. I put in the chat a bit of information about these developing communication unit districts around the state of Vermont. It's maybe not so much about what nonprofits can access and do, but it is about the future. I'm a select board member in Guilford, and I'm working on a CUD, Communications Union District, about bringing broadband to the entire state of Vermont. It's really important work, and I'm very inspired by the collection of people that I've met with in this corner of the state. So learn about your CUD in your town and learn about how they're engaged, or if they're not, how they need to become engaged in the CUD to bring broadband to the entire, this part of the state, but also the entire state. It's incredibly inspirational to see this work, I think, and it's very, very much needed, and it's getting a boost right now, wouldn't you know, because of COVID. there seem to be dollars coming in our direction. So just a note.
Thank you. I see Diane Derby is here from Senator Leahy's office. It's awesome of you to be here, Diane. You have the floor.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me here today, and hi to everyone I know and those who I don't know on this event. I just want to first of all say hats off to Karen and Christopher from the Arts and Humanities Councils, because they have done really terrific work in working together, pooling the resources that have come in from the federal side, and doing such a great job on getting that money out fast. They handled a lot of applications. There were so many moving pieces back in April and May. It was unbelievable that, that they kept up with everything as well as they did. I'll also just put in a plug to maybe think beyond state and think about federal resources. Obviously, a lot of the NEA and NEH funding is what's behind this, as well as the relief fund money that came into the state from the CRF Corona Relief Fund. And it's so important for your colleagues in other states where their arts and humanities councils aren't supported by their congressional delegations to reach out and get that support. Your Vermont delegation gets it. You know, we're all behind NEA and NEH funding. And in the upcoming COVID relief bill, assuming we get one out, you know, we really need to bring the pressure to bear to make sure that there's adequate funding in there for the arts and humanities. So I'll just put in a plug that, you know, let's think a little bit beyond Vermont as well and reach out to those states where the congressional delegations don't get it the way we do, everyone does in Vermont. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Diane, so much. Thanks, Senator Leahy, but thank you specifically for being on point with this for so many years, for so many projects, for so much good. It's great to have you with us. Sarah Coffey, would love to hear your perspective.
Sure. So I'll try to be quick, but I just want to say, you know, I think artists and arts organizations have always been ahead of the curve and are going to be so key to how we transition back to a new kind of normal. So I think the arts community in Southern Vermont and Windham County in particular is really rich. And so I hope that folks continue to find resources, knowledge, and strength from each other. But, you know, we're really lucky to have such a strong arts advocate in Senator Leahy. But what all of you can also do is reach out. It's really, really important that you all reach out to your legislators. We're growing. I feel like we have a lot of room for growing, and in the Vermont legislature about the value for the arts and the creative economy. And there's a strong and growing group of legislators. But, you know, nothing makes us work harder than when we hear from our constituents and when we hear your stories. And so I just want to encourage you to not only write when you have hard times, but invite your legislator to your events and to build those relationships and connections, because that's what we can all be better advocates that way. So I just want you to know that, you know, whether or not you're one of my constituents, I'm a strong advocate for the creative sector in the legislature, and there's a growing number of folks. So I appreciate, Paul, the work that you and VCRD do with the Rural Economic Development Working Group and your role in the state with VCRD. So we know that the creative economy is so important in Southern Vermont.
Well, I can say in a very bipartisan way, there's no one who's more on point for the arts in the State House than Sarah Coffey. So great to see you here on the call. Other folks that have a perspective? I'm looking for hands. Jason Broughton, I noticed that you're here. I don't know if everyone knows you, Jason. Would you like to share a couple of words? It's nice that there's a number of librarians here tonight that are really seeing how they play such a tremendously important role in the creative economy. And we've gotten to know Jason, who's got a pretty bright light in Montpelier around the role of libraries right now. So Jason, it's good to see you. Do you want to share a perspective?
Thank you. I definitely, and I think Karen and Chris, deeply appreciate the connections with them. I appreciate all of the libraries, and to our state representatives, thank you for giving me the chance. And of course, Paul, for those who don't know me, I am your state librarian. I am also the commissioner for the Department of Libraries, and I am also your 2020 Vermont Complete Count Committee chairperson for the census. So please participate in the census, because we wish to have state representation, and it helps bring our funding dollars back to Vermont, and that is how we also are impacted through appropriation. Thanks also to the Senator Representative being here, Diane, nice to see you. For our libraries, I fully understand. I think they know what we're trying to do in a variety of ways, but we also are very appreciative of our kinfolk, as I like to say, in the cultural arts, from artists to food, culinary, to nonprofits who are establishing different types of ways of connecting with people for services. This is a very unique time. I want to be very honest, though, and say libraries are petitioning themselves to examine. We are probably not going to go back to the old way of doing things, and we are looking forward to a brighter and different world once we get out of this. Unfortunately, we are awaiting what the federal government will do on a variety of levels, as the representative has said, and that can be from federal funding and also from Senator Lee's office and also Bernie Sanders. They are looking at what that might look like on a federal level to get legislation passed, but Vermont has to grapple with the here and now. I encourage all of us to remain persistent, vigilant, have great mental health. Art is one great way to do that, and if I were to offer an idea, I would strongly suggest that we all consider what are ways that we can have more connection for a human experience while also dealing with self-expression. And that takes a variety of forms. And I'm quite sure that you people are much smarter than I. And so with that, somebody will have a great way of providing what idea that could look like in Vermont. Because Vermont is very, very artistic, and it shows itself in a variety of beautiful ways, even into the cold, wintry season that we know will be appearing before us. Thank you, and I look forward to visiting once we all have time to do so, catching a ride, having a beer, a drink, and having a great time down south. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much. Boy, it sounded like you'd written that out and read it, Jason. You're so clear.
I thought about that as I was sitting here enjoying a slice of pizza.
Oh, there you go. So I want to turn now and give an opportunity to our visiting team members, and we've only got a few minutes, so we want to be very concise. But I want to start with Sarah Lang, who's with us from the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation. And Sarah, could you share like some reflections on what you heard as key themes or takeaways from this conversation?
Yeah, great, thank you. As Paul said, Sarah Lang with the Regional Development Corporation here. I know a lot of you, so that's really awesome to see. I would say the biggest takeaways I heard throughout this conversation were twofold. One, I would say we really need to focus on capacity building. You know, I think some of us are finding we have more free time than we used to, and thinking about how we can spend that time really improving ourselves, improving our organization, and, you know, something that you wouldn't normally have time to do because you're running around throwing events, raising money, all that kind of stuff. And then the other thing I would say, and I think many people have heard me say this, or our organizations say this a lot, is really truly thinking about acting regionally. Now is truly the time to lean on your neighbors and collaborate. You know, I know each Vermont town likes to think of themselves as special and unique and one of a kind, which they are. However, there are a lot more similarities than I think people give credit to. And I really think that now's the time to find those similarities and lean on each other to create something bigger.
Thanks so much, Sarah.
Yep.
Jacob Hemrick from the Agency of Commerce, would you like to share a reflection?
Oh, thanks, Paul. I wasn't planning to engage as a reflection, but I'm happy to jump in. Yeah,
but you're important. You just used half your time.
Oh well, yeah. Well, thanks, Paul. And yeah, as Paul said, I work as a planning policy manager in the Department of Housing and Community Development. Always enjoy trips down to Windham County. It's such a dynamic region, and I think that comes through with all the creativity, just the really innovative ways and how you're pinpointing ways to navigate the constraints, to continue to deliver services, and find a way to connect with people, and build the creative process and build community. So keep up the great work.
Thanks, Jacob. Karen, a closing reflection?
So I was really struck by two things. What Zahn said about how the pandemic and the killing of George Floyd have opened up new truths about who we are, and the need for artists to help us envision a better vision of ourselves. And then also Sandy's comment that we're likely in this hybrid space for years. that we're not, if you put those two ideas together, right, it means we're not looking at returning to normal anytime soon. We really need to figure out what this new normal looks like and envision something profoundly different together. So I'm grappling as a funder with how to support you all in your work when there's so much uncertainty, but it's clear that we, the Arts Council, maybe the Humanities Council, and other public and private funders need to have different strategies for helping arts organizations and artists to make this transition into whatever that new stage is going to be. So I'll continue to think about that and really enjoying the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen, and thanks for all your leadership these days. You're doing wonderful work there. Also honored to have Christopher Kaufman-Ilstrup with us, the Executive Director of the Vermont Humanities Council. And Christopher, we're delighted to have your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I'll be really quick, but I want to sort of bow down. One of my heroes is in my lower left corner, Veranda Porsche. I'm very delighted to see you here, and you're an inspiration to all of us as a poet and an artist. Thank you for being here. I also want to really thank Diane because she's been tremendous to work with the federal response. But the observation that I would offer is that it seems to me that we are not yet in recovery. That what I'm hearing today is that we are still very much in the relief phase. And we probably will be for quite some time, especially with cultural organizations whose bread and butter is bringing people together in community in close spaces. And that's what many of us do. And we are going to be needing that relief for quite some time to come. So I think the advocacy around that is ever so important. I also really appreciate Representative Coffey's work in the State House and know that we have a lot of work to do with the legislature over the next several weeks to make sure that the money that was allocated for cultural organizations is actually able to get to cultural organizations around the state. So I hope that you will join me and Sarah in that call to contact your legislators and let them know about those challenges. And going back to Karen's beginning remarks, we know we have at least $35 million in projected losses just through the end of the summer. So there's a huge need. And I really am grateful to all of you for coming together to help advocate for that.
Thank you so much, Christopher. Appreciate your being here. Some people who've heard me reflect on the importance of the arts and the creative economy have heard me say this before, but I once met Claudia Stern, who's a brilliant sculptor who did a massive sundial sculpture. I think it was Sao Paulo, Brazil. And Brazil had gone through revolutions and their entire democracy was questionable and threatened for the future. And economic disparities and some of the other challenges we're facing right now had reached a crest. And her sundial had a gleaming steel rod going out. And instead of times, there were the letters of liberty. And all day, this was in the middle of a roundabout in the center of the city where 1 million cars were going by it. And all day people saw the light shining on another word, another letter in the word liberty, and always being brought back to that fundamental thing. She said to me, art creates emotion that produces citizenship. That it's really the arts and our humanities that define our cultural identity, but also our civic identity and who we are as a people. And that fundamental role is here in one of the greatest times of challenge to what we believe in as a people that we've ever experienced in this country. So artists are heroes in this arena. Deeply appreciate you all being on the line for Windham County, for Vermont, for each other, as Robert McBride put. And it's just a tremendous honor to be part of the conversation with you. And we need to rally together, I think, to support what Christopher's saying about finding relief, because we're not quite there to recovery. And so thank you all for being part of this conversation. Jacob, you've posted in the chat, where is it? Okay, I see a link. And what we want to do is we all want to, I guess we can either copy that. Can we click on it, Jacob? Well, hold up a second before you do anything.
I don't think you want to click on it, because I think you're going to want to copy it and then leave this meeting.
Yeah.
And
so,
then put that into a browser URL address space.
It seems crazy, but you're going to copy that link. We're all going to leave. We're going to put that at the top of the browser, click it in, and we'll all be back with the larger group together, okay? So let's do this. It worked the first time. Appreciate everybody's